Hello, folks, and welcome back to week 10 of Rhetoric 306 at the University of Texas. It is still me, Dr. Jennifer Sapio, and I am thrilled to be with you this week to talk through chapters 8 and 9 in our textbook on the modes of explanation and definition in our writing. And I have a lot of wonderful examples to show us, video examples this week that I think will be great fun. So thank you for joining. Let's start by taking a look at the work that you all put together for last week, which was excellent. The Google Slides presentation that you collaboratively contributed to with your project 2 takeaways. So let's go and see those and review those as a class for a moment. Meet me over there. So here is this shared Google Slides document, the top line takeaways from your project 2 research, which you all are now working to develop into your proposal argument for project 3. But let's go ahead and review and enjoy some of the takeaways and the fruits of your labor and your research here. Thank you very much, Supriya, for writing about the COVID conundrum and sharing the variety of different protocols that are in use in different areas of the world. And thank you for referencing these quotations. Everyone I know says that student health is awful. Wong said it's an open secret. Wow, really powerful emotional appeals there as well. Himina writes about the new Texas abortion law, a controversy that needs to be addressed. Many points of view on this topic, as you mentioned, and thank you for referencing Phillips and Thurman, these sources talking about incentivizing the public, the law allowing people to sue anyone they suspect of aiding in an abortion and providing them with a reward potentially of $10,000. And Thurman's quote here as well about, I'll just read it. I was trying to paraphrase it, but it says, I have nothing to gain from this disclosure and perhaps much to lose in revealing the hole that this decision carved in me. I hope that some light will shine through, reaching women and girls who might feel ashamed that they can't protect themselves from and have no agency over. Really powerful. Again, emotional appeals we're seeing coming through. Melody, thank you for also writing about abortion laws and statistics and data here, including several organizations. Your last quotation on the slide, 88% of women who have abortions get the procedure in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. And 61% of women have their abortion before the 9th week. Very interesting data. Thank you again, Melody. Haley writes about the toxicity of Greek life, noting a lot of people were able to completely write off the long history of racism, which is bolstered by fraternity ideals and traditions from within. An expose here about, as you mentioned here, a long history of racism. Thank you, Haley, for that work close to home. Salmai writes about the homeless population in Austin and around UT, and several incidents you are reporting about and their effect on local policies and organizations' positions on the issue here in Austin. Thank you for that. Molly, I appreciate your slide here as well about the topic. And reporting here of what you learned about, and that in particular, that middle point, that doctors feel that providing this type of procedure is an act of compassion for their patient, even if they're uncomfortable with the idea. They do it out of trust for their patient. Really interesting stakeholders' perspective you shared there. Vanessa, thank you for writing about peer pressure that students are facing on college campuses in Greek life. You have a similarity there with one of your colleagues, as we already noticed. And this kind of policy that you're hinting toward in the middle bullet point, that parents should discuss peer pressure with their children and how to react to certain situations, which I'm excited to see you potentially developing into your proposal for Project 3. And the last one we'll look at for today is Hani's topic, asking, should universities require vaccinations? And reporting out that after the FDA's full approval of the Pfizer vaccine, more universities are trying to require vaccination in the United States. And of course, considering opponents' views, as well as you do in the bottom point, claiming they have the right to choose if they want to be vaccinated or not. Great. Thank you all so much. Again, this is just really excellent work and an opportunity for us to be able to essentially have a research president, although we are meeting asynchronously. And so go in and take a look if you haven't already. And if some of these ideas sparked you to go off on your own additional new research path, I'll encourage you to pursue that as well. Way to go, folks. Okay, let's move into our new material for this week. As I said, chapters 8 and 9 on explanation and definition in our prose. So let's head back for a couple of slides and then several video examples. Okay, so as we transition into drafting our proposals for Project 3, which is due upcoming in 2-3 weeks or so, right? And so we're if you're not already, you should be, deeply transitioning into opening up a new Word document and starting to think about, in particular this week, how you might need to provide some additional explanations for your audience members, or redefine some terms within your controversy, and get started kind of free writing and drafting and working toward that proposal. You are adding 3 additional sources, primary and secondary, to your document set about this topic that you've been pursuing now through Project 2 and now into Project 3. So secondary sources, that's self-explanatory. That's what you've been practicing already, gathering newspaper articles, book chapters, scholarly peer-reviewed sources. But that primary source bit is different. And for you to conduct primary research, you'll need to reach out and conduct an interview, or perhaps send around a survey, or have kind of informal, at least, conversations with stakeholders and folks who you can actually engage with, urgently in real time, not in a secondary nature, genuinely thinking about the definition of that term, that terminology. We want direct primary access rather than secondary or in addition to. And so you do need at least one primary source. Interviews, y'all, please reach out, use my name, say you are studying rhetoric and writing at the University of Texas, and see if some of your stakeholders, those of you studying, abortion laws, reach out to congressmen and Texas state senators who are representing you and see if they would agree to an interview. Those who are interested about coronavirus policy on campus, go ahead and reach out to the Dell Medical School, or to student organizations, or the president of the university, and see if you can get an interview and a line in your essay from speaking with them. You'd be surprised how many people would be willing to give you a moment of their time, or at least to exchange an email with you. But if you don't want to do the interview route, Surveys are a wonderful way to go as well. Qualtrics is very easy to set up. Google Forms is going to be my main suggestion there for sending out surveys. And please use our class. Send an email to our class list through Canvas, or send me a survey and I'll forward it along. And I'm sure all of our classmates would be willing to answer a few questions on your topics as well. And that can be considered primary research for my purposes, right? This isn't, a psychology course where you need to have kind of testing procedures. This isn't statistically significant research. It's just anecdotal journalistic primary research. I shouldn't have said just there. That adjective kind of invalidated the form. I'm saying there are different qualifications for what research criteria are in different fields: science, journalism, etc. So you may conduct interviews, you may send out surveys, and for example, this week I will be asking you to complete a Google form, midterm evaluation, and you can use that, well, obviously to gather information for the course moving forward. That's very helpful, but also it's a model for you of just, putting together a quick Google form with a few questions you can send out to your constituents, your folks in your audience that you're interested in talking to, and get some feedback quite quickly. So that's our setup for Project 3. And now chapters 8 and 9 today are going to help to give you some additional material and ways to think through the body of your essay in your proposal. So key terms from chapter 8, which is on explaining. As chapter 8 indicates, explaining is simply to help readers understand something. And there are many different purposes for explanations, as we're going to get into in just a moment. But a primary kind of distinction here, and you're going to get into this in your discussion post for this week, is between helpful, focused, targeted, additional information that your audience needs and wants to understand, versus, as Nakotra talks about in the chapter, splaining, which is explaining in a condescending or non-rhetorically appropriate manner. And we are going to ask in your discussion post for this week if you've ever had an experience like that. And I'll tell you my most recent experience like that, which was quite funny, I think. So rhetorical explanations, as I was just suggesting, have a variety of purposes. You want to consider what your audience already knows and how your audience feels about the topic so that you can be targeted and not miss that rhetorical situation and that rhetorical opportunity to engage with your audience's values and beliefs and needs at the time, and thus to potentially persuade or convince them in your proposal argument. You want to illuminate meaning, share causes that your audience doesn't understand, help your readers to know how something works, correct misunderstandings. There are so many opportunities and openings for explanation in your text, and that might be a way for you to engage with your audience in this Project 3. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of example videos of explainer videos, which you may know from other fields are very popular genre in sales and marketing and product development. So let's go take a look at a couple of brands' explainer videos and see which of these rhetorical purposes we're seeing in these explainer videos. Let's go check them out.
stand this. Where is it?
Second floor. Guy's a mess.
This doesn't make any sense.
Need a bullhorn?
Brought my own.
Kevin, I'm here to help. Don't worry, it's just Twitter.
But how do I even get started?
Just press the button and pick a name. Come on, Kevin, let's go Twitter.
My name's not Kevin. It's Kenny. Kenny G.
Hold on, your name is Kenny G.
Oh, the name's already taken.
Yeah, I'm less surprised than you are.
I should just quit.
How about Notorious Kenny G?
It's available. I do like that. Now it wants to know my interests. Entertainment, comic books, movies.
Look, there's so many people to follow. There's a lady over here that likes Geos.
Who doesn't love Geodes?
Many people.
I like geodes.
Kenny, keep following.
Lonzo Ball?
Thanks for the follow.
No!
Sorry about that.
Problem.
Nice colors, though. Come on, Kenny. You wanted to come out here and follow everyone.
You can do it.
Just follow all.
I'm gonna follow every one of you. This is awesome.
I'm trying to pause it. There we go. Okay, thank you for checking that out. Obviously, a video about signing up for Twitter. Okay, an essential how-to. I mean, it does not get more textbook explanatory than that. But notice, right? In even a subject as simplistic as how to sign up for Twitter, really leading us through step by step, choosing your username, selecting your first follow, right? We're really talking about the basics here, but notice this is not condescending, right? It is, it has a certain humor, a certain kind of tension, which, let's face it, folks who are not signed up for Twitter at this point are, the only folks left are those who genuinely are freaked out and kind of want someone to call about how to get on, right? So this is precisely meeting its audience, and giving the audience what it needs, explaining the details, showing the screenshots, in a really humorous and kind of entertaining way here, meeting that rhetorical moment, and great text and video combined, which we're going to start to think kind of more multimedially as we move into Project 4 as well, our last assignment for this course upcoming. So we'll have more video and image-based materials as examples. Let's take a look at one more explainer video.
Just guessing at numbers and figures, pulling the puzzles apart. Questions of science, science and progress don't speak as loud as my heart. Nobody said it was easy. It's such a shame for us to part. Nobody said it was easy. No one ever said it would be so hard.
if you were wondering as you were watching, what is this an explanation of? Well, you got it there at the end with that Chipotle brand logo on the transport vehicle, and then the motto at the end, cultivate a better world. Is that what it said? But yet, not very much language there or text certainly on screen, but a really powerful attempted, at least, correction of a misunderstanding or kind of a rebranding opportunity here for Chipotle, right? Where you see this kind of narrative in this really idyllic imagery, that cartoon animation, right? Where you see farms developing and barns being built and animals being put in pens. And then you see this moment where the farmer has kind of an aha moment and the color changes. It's much more bright, vivid imagery. We let the pigs out of the pens. They're roaming freely. We see the sun rising, right? So without text, and yet still this powerful rhetorical explanation of essentially saying, this is how we get our food. This is a more sustainable model. This is a more animal friendly, or, kind of organic, or I'm not quite sure there what the specific details are, but we certainly see a suggested explanation here, correcting standings or an attempt to kind of rebrand in that case. You all let me know, send me an email if you think that was effective or not. But good examples, I think, of explainer videos there from Twitter and from Chipotle. Let's head back to the slides for just a second to follow up on, to finish up on this topic of explanation, and then to preview for you all your discussion post related to Chapter 8. So as you head into drafting your proposal, you might consider working through these journalistic questions as a prompt to get you started thinking about what explanations may be needed for your audience and for your topic, right? Y'all are dealing with some really complex, complicated medical terms, in the case of the abortion procedure and the very complicated legal history and background, or in the case of COVID, again, really complicated medical terminology here, really specific timeline that needs to be fleshed out for your audience and for everyone's topics. So going through these journalistic questions may be helpful for everyone as a free writing exercise or prompt to get you going toward that Project 3 draft. So here are the journalistic questions on the screen for you to consider. It's basically who, what, when, where, why, right? But take a look at these, and again, these are in Chapter 8 of your textbook, Nikotra's Becoming Rhetorical, and see if these resonate for you and open up opportunities for you to further describe and elaborate your controversy. So who people are, who someone is, including why they're important or significant. Cover key figures, right? Make sure you tell us who the actors are, who the stakeholders are. When something happened, get as specific about dates as possible, specific months, specific years, chronological order. If we have a long history to cover, timelines could be helpful. Identifying causes, kind of going back and back and back until you get to the root of something can be helpful in an explanation. Identifying and further discussing where and why and how something happened or is happening or will happen, including all of the contextual facets, geographical, social, and cultural, that you may need to cover as well. And ultimately, the big picture, what does it all mean? So what, why are you telling us about this in the first place? With a proposal argument, you really are going to want to hone in and get your audiences invested in what you're saying and potentially changing their mind or getting them on your team to agree with you and go the direction you're wanting to go. So as detailed and specific as you can be on all of these fronts to really catch your audience members up on who you're talking about, when the storyboard is, where, why, and how, and who cares in the first place. For your discussion post related to this explanation chapter, meet me over at the Canvas course website and I'll show you your first discussion post for the week. Okay, so I'm on the Canvas course website. You can navigate over here on the left-hand menu to discussions, and you will see discussion post 9, explaining versus splaining. If you click in there, you can see the instructions, which read, in Chapter 8, Nicotra contrasts explaining, helping readers understand something, versus explaining in a condescending or non-rhetorically appropriate manner, and asks you in a sentence or two to tell us about a time you've been splained to. And I have got to share, because this has never happened to me in quite this way, and it happened just recently, so I've got to share with you all. So I was having dinner with a family that my 3rd grade son, met a friend at school, and the parents invited us over. So we were having this family situation. A couple and the kiddos were playing. And so we're getting to know one another. This is the first time we had this kind of social interaction. We're talking about this and that and the other thing, and got onto a topic about something that I write about. And the very nice person whose house we were at started to talk to me about an article that they had read online, and went on and on about it. And it was my article. They were talking about me. They were talking about my article. They were explaining it to me. And they were doing just a fine job, actually, too. So it wasn't intentionally kind of missing the mark or condescending. It was just a wild coincidence that in fact, they were trying to explain a concept to the person who had published that concept. So it was a wonderful moment. And I'm curious to see what y'all's experiences have been being splained to in whatever circumstances you're willing to share. So that covers Chapter 8 for this week. And then let's move on to Chapter 9 as well. We're doing 2 chapters this week. And so let's take a look at a couple of key terms back on the slides, and then a couple of video examples. Okay, so even though we are composing a proposal for Project 3, right? You are indicating a course of action, a policy, decision, a solution, a way forward in your controversy. And we talked about last week the stasis questions, essentially being the foundation that builds up to policy and procedure arguments, right? Beginning with definition and fact, and then moving into evaluation and policy proposal. But of course, as with anything in a rhetorical situation, and as we increasingly are becoming rhetorical and thinking about all of these pressures at work all the time, we realize that policy and procedure arguments often involve aspects of definition arguments as well. And I wonder if that is the case for you all, right? So as you're considering making this policy proposal to one of our constituencies on campus, to a student organization or the president of the university, or writing an op-ed to the Daily Texan or whatever it is you're going to be doing, in addition to explaining those journalistic questions, who, what, when, where, why, and who cares, related to your controversy, do you also need to be providing definitions of terms, especially those kind of medically complicated or, legally specific terms relevant to your controversy? Do you need to be redefining terms? Perhaps you're suggesting, as was in the case of the Chipotle explainer, that there has been a misunderstanding or a definition that you disagree with and you want to redefine a concept. So thinking in chapter 9 about definitions and how you can employ those and definitional arguments within your procedure proposal, maybe an additional aspect of your claim that you want to pursue. So some key terms from chapter 9 are on the slide here. Arguments of genus, right? Think in the sciences, genus and species, right? Think about types. Arguments of genus are a type of definition argument over how a thing should be defined. So, big picture, abstract questions like what is love or what is art, which we'll look at an example of in a moment, or very concrete, what does the Second Amendment provide for, right? Definitionally, which, not that a concrete question is any less complicated, okay? But big picture here, how a thing should be defined, and then arguments of classification are comparative. It's a type of definition argument over whether a thing should be classed one way or another, as X or as Y here in the template language. And so we're going to take a look at a couple of examples right now to illustrate. Right now, these definitions, these key terms are quite abstract. So follow me. I think we have one more slide, and then follow me to those videos to help illustrate the point. Okay, so in addition to thinking through those journalistic questions that I showed you a moment ago, you should also consider thinking about these definitional questions related to your controversy. What exactly are you defining or redefining, if anything, either a concrete or an abstract concept? How is what you're defining been misunderstood? How has what you're defining been misunderstood in the past or is currently being misunderstood? And what is your definition and why is it better? Let's go and see these two videos. One, a question of genus, what is an American? And another, a question of classification, essentially, should Banksy's work be considered art or vandalism? So we have two interesting and specific questions of definition. Let's go and take a look at the first.
I am American. I was born and raised in America. But see, that to me is a really loaded question because I don't know that I feel American per se. I know I feel like a New Yorker.
I didn't grow up under an American influence like a lot of people. I grew up in poverty.
My parents immigrated here from the Soviet Union because of religious persecution.
Getting new opportunities.
That's why I came to America. The opportunities that my parents didn't have back there are abundant here.
America is not just white. America is colored people.
Even though I'm a straight white male, I've always identified as somewhat of a minority because of the Jewish status, but I've always felt a little bit like a in wolf's clothing rather than the reverse.
For a good portion of my life, I would identify myself as, Chinese American. The hyphen, it's very important,
When I'm with my family, my extended family, I really feel like I'm Afghan. And when I'm with my friends, I really feel like I'm American.
I think nowadays I just say I'm American and that's that.
I came from the Dominican Republic 3 years ago, actually, and it was a hustle to get a citizenship, to not be an immigrant. I still kind of don't feel like an American.
Being American was what you'd see on TV or on the news or on sitcoms. It is something that was in another world to me and didn't always seem real.
When people meet me, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, "What are you?" And that makes me feel like I'm not allowed to be American because of my skin color. And I don't really understand why, because I was born and raised in New York. But it's like my parents' background, it defines who I am, and it doesn't. That's not the only thing that defines me.
Finally, I have a document that tells everybody else that I am a girl who doesn't know English, and she could finally do it.
Okay, so thank you all for taking a look at that example. As you can see from the title of this piece produced at Baruch College by WNYC, what does it mean to be American? We have a very big picture, complicated, complex, deeply heartfelt, emotional argument here, a definitional argument of genus. Of type, right? This is a potentially, abstract, ideological, complex, theoretical question, and yet deeply concrete and specific and tied to real people's lives and effects of this definition as it has changed over time. Who is able to be a citizen and who is not. And as that definition has changed over time in writing, just words. What's the big deal here, right? It's just a definition, and yet the real lived consequences and effects on people's lives for generations cannot be overstated. So what a powerful example here of a definitional argument of genus to consider. The next example and the last example for today I'd like for us to take a look at is a fun question of classification. Would you call what we are about to watch art or vandalism? You will decide. Wonderful. Okay, so that was our last example. The video here from NBC News, Banksy hits the London subway with coronavirus-themed graffiti. Okay, so if you're not familiar with this British artist, Banksy, go ahead and hop on the Google or YouTube bunny trail for a moment and enjoy learning about that artist, right? But kind of provocatively, I'm asking as an example of a definitional argument of classification: is Banksy's work here vandalism or art? And that question, I wish we were all live in class right now for this particular moment so that we could hear some perspectives, which would require clear definitions of each concept. Certainly looks like graffiti, right? Certainly looks like vandalism. What's the difference between this type of public painting on the subway versus other types that you might have seen when you've been on the train in New York City or elsewhere, right? That's essentially the provocative question of Banksy's art in general, right? Where that's his shtick, is to essentially to have the reader discover graffiti on the street in this really powerful way. You may have seen the painting that he did that shredded once it was sold at, was it Christie's or Sotheby's? In any case, you all can fact check me on where the auction was. But this is precisely the question that Banksy's work tangles with, is the difference between art and vandalism, public work, and discourse with the culture. Sorry, I'm distracted looking at the video on my second screen. Anyway, so we have looked today at chapters 8 and 9, talking about explaining and defining in our textbook. We have looked at 4 examples, example videos. We have introduced discussion post 9, and now let me go and show you the last discussion post for the week before I show you the for next time slide. Meet me over there at discussion post 10 now. We're back on the Canvas course website. We've clicked on the left-hand navigation menu into discussions. I already showed you discussion post 9, explaining versus splaining, and here's your last discussion post for the week, discussion post 10, explaining and defining. After you've completed your reading for the week, you will be well prepared to move into answering this prompt. Identify something you might have to explain or define as you write your argument for Project 3. How will you make that argument? And so now we are, as I said, really in earnest, turning our attention toward opening up a new document and starting to draft this proposal. Now that you have done all of your research in Project 2 about your controversy, and you've collected so many different sources and considered so many different stakeholders' positions, as you've identified audiences where you are going to target and potentially publish publicly your suggested solution, right? You have found the answer and you are trying to get more folks on board. As you think about composing that and drafting that, what additional material do your readers, does your audience need to understand? What else will you need to explain? Think about those journalistic questions from today. Who, what, when, where, why, and who cares? Think about those definitional arguments. If there are complicated terms that you need to help your reader to understand, or if there's a misunderstanding that you are trying to correct in the public record. Whatever that is for your individual project, for Project 3. Go ahead and consider those questions here and answer for discussion post 10. And now follow me over to the last slide for next time, and I want to make sure you're set up for the midterm evaluation as well. And actually, before we head to the for next time slide, let me just show you where that midterm evaluation is, because I'm about to ask you to do it. So in modules, on the left-hand navigation menu, scroll down to Unit 3, which is where we are now, proposing our course of action. If you did not complete the Google Slides top line takeaways, which I was showing off your classmates at the beginning of this video, if you haven't yet uploaded that, please go ahead and enter those couple of takeaways from your Project 2. It's a great opportunity for us to share our wealth of knowledge with one another. So please do that if you haven't. And then here at the bottom of the list for Unit 3 is the midterm. Please click in there, open it in a new window. You are going to see a few questions that are really essential feedback for us as we move forward and finish out the remainder of the final 6 weeks of our course together. Which of the following describes your evaluation of the textbook? Is it too dense and difficult, too elementary and redundant? Is it clear and helpful, or you don't know, you haven't read it? Let me know. The next question asks, compared to Project 1, do you prefer being able to choose your own topic in Project 2? Yes or no? Did you like everyone working together on that water quality topic? Or are you grateful to have the opportunity to research your own topic of choice? The last two questions ask you to describe one way that you like to be engaged in class and one challenge for you in this class. I really appreciate your feedback. Click the purple submit button there, and I'll be able to consider your responses as we move forward through the remainder of the course, and then for your classmates and colleagues in future semesters as well. Thank you in advance for your participation there. And now to the last slide for next time. Item 1, complete the midterm evaluation, which I just showed you. Item 2, read chapters 8 and 9 in Becoming Rhetorical, which we deeply discussed today, explaining and defining. Item 3, complete discussion posts 9 and 10, which I previewed for you today, sharing about times you've been splained to and ideas for defining terms in your proposal. And of course, as always, reach out to me with questions and concerns. jsapio@utexas.edu is how you get a hold of me. Office hours on Wednesdays, or I'm happy to meet at another time of your convenience. I hope y'all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you again this time next week. All the best.